Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachariya Yamuna Tira Vanachariya Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Sri Radha Madhava ki, Sri Radha Giridhari ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Puri Vrajika Jaja Shuddha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Savai Charana Aravinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Rupar ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pad Paramhamsa Puri Vrajika Jaja Shuddha Shri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Go Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories assembled devotees. All glories, Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Hare Krishna. Shweta Asan. Maybe he was Lord Brahma in a previous life and he's used to riding on something white. So today we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam. 6th canto, 5th chapter, Narada Muni cursed by Prajapati Daksha, and this is text 16. Actually, before we begin, today is the anniversary of the martyring of 2 saints. Did you know that? When I was a youngin', and probably Dravida can attest to this also, today was called Saint Valentine's Day. Now they just call it Valentine's Day because saints aren't very popular. But there were 2 Saint Valentines. Did you know that? The first was a monk, celibate, very, very austere, about 200 and something years after Christ, preaching in a place where if you were preaching Christianity, you were killed. The Roman Empire. But despite all of that, he took those risks, and he was preaching, and finally he was caught, tortured, and killed on February 14th. And there was another Saint Valentine's. Around the same time, he was a bishop of the Christian church, but also at that time, it was still illegal to preach Christianity. He was a monk, he was celibate, very, very austere, probably didn't eat too many sweets. And he was caught, tortured to death on February 14th. So today, 2 powerful Christian celibate Christian preachers were caught, tortured, and killed today. So then people say, well, what does that have to do with Valentine's Day, which is all about romance, right? Well, what so happens is that in the Roman Empire, right around this time, February 14th, is the beginning of spring. And people are noticing all the flowers, and then the birds are chirping, and it's a time for mating for birds. So this caught their attention as a time of love, and so on and so on. And somehow they mixed the 2 days. The days 2 saints were martyred, killed, tortured, and the arrival of the spring and the time for mating. So for the devotees, it's a time to remember powerful preaching and taking all risks on behalf of the Lord, and for the materialists, it's a time for cards, candy, and romance. So pick your choice. What are you guys doing here? What's going on? So anyways, that's St. Valentine's Day. There's an interesting mix there. But why are 2 celibate monks a day of romance? I think, is it today? Actually, I think more flowers are sold today than any other time. But candy, I think it comes in second to Halloween today. You know, giving candy and so on. How the 2 connected. But that the Romans were expert at that, mixing those 2 like that. So you can meditate on that during Bhagavatam class if it's boring. Okay, so Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srishti Apyaya Karim Mayam Velakula Anta Vegitam. I almost said vegitam, but it's vegitam. Okay. Mattasya Tam Avinyasya Kim Asat Karmabi Bhavet Srishyapyaya Karimayam Velakulanta Vegitam Mattasya Tam Avinyasya Kim Asat Karmabir Bhavet Srishyapyaya Karimayam Velakulanta Vegitam Mattasya Tam Avinyasya Kimasat Karmabir Bhavet Srishyapyaya Karimayam Velakulanta vegitam mattasya tam avigyasya kim asat karmabir bhavet. Anyone like to chant? Shrishti, creation. Apyaya, dissolution. Karim, one who causes. Mayam, the illusory energy. Velakula anta, near the banks. Vegitam, being very rapid. Mattasya, of one who is mad. Tam, that material nature. Avigyasya, who does not know. Kim asat karmabir bhavet. What benefit can there be by performing temporary fruitive activities? Excuse me. So translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Narada Muni had said that there is a river flowing in both directions. The Haryashvas understood the purport of this statement. Has anyone seen a river flowing in two directions? Okay. Material nature functions in two ways, by creation and dissolution. Thus, the river of material nature flows both ways. A living entity who unknowingly falls in this river is submerged in its waves, and since the current is swifter near the banks of the river, he is unable to get out. What will be the benefit of performing fruitive activities in that river of Maya? Purport. One may be submerged in the waves of the river of Maya, but one may also be free from the waves by coming to the banks of knowledge and austerity. Near these banks, however, the waves are very strong. If one does not understand how he is being tossed by the waves, but simply engages in temporary fruitive activities, what benefit will he derive? In the Brahma Samhita, 5th chapter, 44th verse, there is this statement, Shristi stiti palaya sadhana shaktireka chayeva yasya bhuvanani vibharta durga. The Maya Shakti Durga is in charge of Shristi stiti palaya, creation and dissolution. And she acts under the direction of the Supreme Lord. Maya dakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. That chayeva means like a shadow. Just follows. When one falls in the river of nescience, he is tossed here and there by the waves, But the same Maya can also save him when he surrenders to Krishna or becomes Krishna conscious. Krishna consciousness is knowledge and austerity. A Krishna conscious person takes knowledge from the Vedic literature, and at the same time he must practice austerities. To attain freedom from material life, one must take to Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, if one very busily engages in the so-called advancement of science, what benefit will he derive? If one is carried away by the ways of nature, what is the meaning of being a great scientist or philosopher? Mundane science and philosophy are also material creations. One must understand how Maya works and how one can be released from the tossing waves of the river of nescience. That is one's first duty. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshudhanminitam Dena Taismai Sri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svabadandikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sri Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Vanchakapadrupascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Bhavani Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. So by your blessings and good wishes, I'll try to say a few things. So Narada Muni was an expert preacher because he knew how to preach to different people at different times. And that's very, very important. There's this story, and then also I think it's the Maharaj Rahugana and Judd Bart. That's the description, or it's the story of this forest of material enjoyment. There's another story where it's, well, actually Paranjana also. In other words, it's a little difficult to understand, and there has to be an explanation. It has to expound on what's being, and this is very, very terse. This Narada Muni didn't waste any time at all, because he knew how intelligent these Harashvas were, performing so many austerities. That's the whole point. The purport here is one has to also perform austerities. It's not just book knowledge. One has to perform austerities, and by those austerities, what happens? Poof! All that knowledge becomes realized. So we remain on the theoretical platform. So because the Harashvas were performing so many austerities, they were ripe for Krishna consciousness, and all he had to do was say a few words. That's all. Yeah, and and they understood it, and that's what's being said here. They understood exactly what he was saying. Exactly what he was saying. They're completely in tune. You just had to say a few words. A mundane example is when you're married. After you've been married a few decades, all the spouses have to do is look at each other, and they know exactly what to do. Right? They know exactly what's going to... I'm just saying. I'm just letting you know from experience. I know. It just happens. You're in tune. The point is you're in tune. And it's maybe many different relationships like that. All you have to do, if you're working with someone from a long time, all they have to do is turn around and look, and okay, I got to get this report. You just know. Isn't it true? You just know. You're in tune with that other person, and you can immediately understand what they need, what they want. Okay? Others, if not in tune, you have no idea whatsoever, and you explain it a million times, they still don't get it. So, to the credit of the Haryashvas, because of their austerities, they could understand Krishna consciousness. So what can we learn from that is to the extent we're also performing the austerities of our sadhana and daily life and so on, then somehow or other, all of these instructions we're reading, they open up to us. They become easier and easier to understand. And people say, I just don't understand what's going on here. In fact, Krishna says in the end of the Bhagavad Gita, one shouldn't explain this secret to who? To try to ones who are not austere. Right? If someone's simply absorbed in sense gratification, there is a yoga maya samabritaha. There is a curtain that becomes drawn. And one just can't understand the soul, let alone Krishna. That's just how it is. And there's a reason for that, because that jiva doesn't want to understand the soul in Krishna. It's not arbitrary that Krishna's pulling a curtain on you and not on you. It's exactly to the extent we want to forget Krishna, he just pulls the curtain. Like that. So austerity is the wealth of the Brahmins. That's one term that's used over and over again. And the wealth of the devotees and the transcendentalists, because by that austerity, if it's the proper austerity, you can perform austerities and make your heart very, very hard. Sometimes you read in the Bhagavatam, there's different stories of yogis. They're just performing all these austerities, and the downside of that is one can become very hard-hearted and also easily angered, because you get angry. You don't get anything to eat. You don't get enough sleep, and what happens? You snap, right? And you get angry at someone and curse them and get all upset, right? Just like Ambarish Maharaj and Durvas Muni. He snapped. He pulls out a hair and creates this demoness, right? And you said the other day it was a demoness, and big offense against the Ambarish, and he's chased all over the universe. So the downside of, so we have to be intelligent, and our spiritual master and our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada has laid out exactly what kind of austerities we should be performing. And by doing that, all of this information will become vigyan instead of just gyan. There's two kinds of knowledge, gyan, vigyan. Gyan means theoretical knowledge, vigyan means you start realizing it. And that revelation or realization, no one can tell you, It's something on your own. People can doubt all they want, but Krishna reveals the truth within the heart. Dhammi buddhi yogam tam. Krishna says right there in the Bhagavad Gita, I give you, or I reveal to you. Also he gives the example of a lamp, deepena. It lights a lamp in our heart, and we can just see everything perfectly well. And people may or may not accept that. Because there's two kinds of proof, you know that? There's prove something to yourself, and then you got to prove something to someone else. That's two kinds of proof. So you may prove Krishna consciousness to yourself, but not be able to prove it to someone else. Because the austerity is there, and one can see. So in the purport here, Prabhupada's saying that this river flowing in two ways is this material world, and māyā, the material nature, functions in two ways, creation and dissolution. So what is Krishna saying in the Bhagavad Gita? Everything has a beginning, antavat tupalam tesham. Is that the one? What's the one where everything has a beginning and end? Therefore a wise man does not delight in them. Does anyone know this? 5th chapter? Yeah, doesn't take any pleasure because it has a beginning and an end. It's intelligent. Just to give an example, if I were Dr. Ross, if I said, here's $100, what would you like? Would you like that? Here's $100. Okay, 1,000. Come on, I gotta get a smile out of you. $10,000, Dr. Ross. Here you go. Okay? You just take it, a gift. Maybe a new dhoti or something. I don't know. Okay. I gave you $10,000, okay? Then I said, I want it back after class. It's like, what's that all about? You said I gave $10,000, but I want it back after class. So what does it say here? Kim asat karma bir bhavat. What's the use? What's the use of holding on to that $10,000, and then as soon as class is over, you got to give it back. It goes away. So there's a point here, the material nature, everything, there's creation and dissolution, and it's always going on. Whatever we begin, there's going to be an end. Anta. Anta kale chamameva. There's always, anta means the end. Everything is going to come to an end. The clothing we're wearing, can you believe it? All those nice dhotis you got in India? One day there'll just be maybe cheesecloth in the kitchen or something like that. Just gone, right? And our bodies, that harmonium, that Apple computer. Should I say Apple? Am I allowed to say that on the internet? No. Okay, no. That laptop, generic laptop. Right, I can't say. They pay us, right? We can't use brand names. It's all going to be gone. And another thing is our body, our youthful body. It will be gone, and our middle-aged body and our old body will all be gone in due course of time, washed away by the waves of material nature. And it's interesting, young people don't really feel that so much. They don't. And I remember someone, I don't know when it was, but it was the beginning of one of our wars recently, over the last 2 decades or something. Someone was making the point that there's one reason young people are made into soldiers, because they have that quality of thinking they'll never die. They're just foolish, and they just think that they can just do whatever they want to do, and nothing's going to happen to them like that. Those are the kind of people you want out there. And whereas you get older, you start worrying about things. My father told a story when he was in Vietnam, because he was in all 3 wars. But he was in Vietnam. He was in the Air Force. He was an officer. In fact, he was General Westmoreland's secretary, if you know anything about that. He spent all day long writing letters home. People have died. So he said that's the reason he got out when he came back. But anyways, he told me this one story that they asked him to lead a convoy of trucks into a dangerous area. And he tried to get out of it. He said, I've got, 5 kids and a wife and all. Can't you get someone younger? Someone who's got nothing to lose? And, he was asking, please. And they said, no. So whatever. So, but because young people just go right on in. They just go right in like, woohoo, And when you get older, you start worrying about these things. So it's the amazing factor of illusion that we forget about this creation and dissolution. It's always going on at every moment. Shristi stiti palaya sadhana shakta eka. That's Māyā's business. Every plan. What is that verse? By no, Steinbeck, about mice and men. I'm sorry. I'm quoting a Asampradaya personality here in class, but there's a famous saying about all the plans of mice and men. They go off to rye. I think it's by like Robert Burns. So it wasn't Steinbeck that wrote the book, but originally came from. Okay, Burns. I should know that. My heritage. All the plans of mice and men go off to rye. So whatever plan we have, mice or men, in other words, big or little, even Lord Brahma's plan for this universe, he can't keep it going. After 311 trillion years, it all gets sucked into the body of Mahavishnu. It all goes. Like that. And the mouse has this little hole in the wall or something like that. How it goes. So every single thing in this world will go. So these Harashvas, they can immediately capture that. That's right. Every single thing. So what is the use of continuing here, performing all these austerities simply to engage in material fruitive activities? So that was one instruction, the instruction that Narada Muni gave, that they could immediately understand it. And now Prabhupada's saying, a very good point here is about the knowledge and the austerity. So a Krishna-conscious person takes knowledge from the Vedic literature, and at the same time he must practice austerities. The two have to go hand in hand if one's a spiritual practitioner. Otherwise it's simply book knowledge. And one doesn't rise above the platform of simply being a speculator and a philosopher. In one's day-to-day life, one is still addicted to so many just sense gratification. And Prabhupada, many times the example would come up of Professor Dimmock. Yeah, on the Bhagavad Gita, he's forward. He's a very, very renowned scholar of Sanskrit, and he was actually trying to write his own commentary on the or Bhagavad Gita translation and so on. But the man was addicted to smoking and drinking and all kinds of things like that. And But he was recognized. University of Chicago or one of those universities, very, very high positioned. This person knows Bhagavad Gita, knows, and so on. But he couldn't. His day-to-day life was just. So he didn't rise above just knowing some of the information. So my sister-in-law here, she took a course in Bhagavad Gita at like UCSD Extension. And I said, "Hey Debbie, how'd the course go? What'd you learn?" Just say something about be good. I don't know. It was just like nothing. And I didn't want to get into it. Whether it's, who taught the course? But she said, yeah. I just want to let you know, I just took a class on Bhagavad Gita. You know the Bhagavad Gita. I said, yeah. So, okay. So without any austerities, it just becomes something interesting to talk about. Something interesting to talk about. And no real spiritual advancement. So the austerities have to be there. So that's a very important point. Why all these austerities, rising early in the morning, bathing, and all the different activities of our sadhana and the chanting, that's the big austerity. Did you know that? That's the big one. Our japa. Japa and chanting, the Harinam, that's the yajna, that's the austerity. So much of our advancement will come depending on our how we chant, our japa and so on. All of these things are there, and in due course of time, everything will become revealed. I just read, I don't know, can't say the whole quote, but it's a wonderful quote just read by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. He's telling his disciples not to become discouraged. You're chanting your rounds, and sometimes you think, when will that day be mine? When am I going to rise above this neophyte platform of chanting and so on? And it's so much as sometimes a struggle to control my mind. And he's encouraging them. He says, you just keep on chanting, keep on chanting, keep on chanting. And he says, while you're chanting, this one? He says, while you're chanting on your beads, you meditate that your fingers are actually touching the feet of Lord Chaitanya. That was his advice. No, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta. His advice to his disciples. So as you're touching those tulsi beads, you should meditate. You're touching the feet of Lord Chaitanya, asking for mercy. So encouraging, because it's an austerity. It's a great austerity, but only by performing that austerity will all this information become revealed. I was speaking with a gentleman yesterday as a handyman who came to my house to help me fix something. A nice guy, and he goes, hey, you retired? I said, no, I'm clergy, like that. And he goes, oh, he said, that's pretty good. So I had this conversation about religion. And of course, he was one of those, and I told him, and he laughed. I said, you're a SBNR, aren't you? He goes, that sounds like an insult. Do you know what an SBNR is? Spiritual but not religious person. Remember that? I told you that. I think I had a class on that before. It's actually a term. Oh yes, I'm an SBNR. I'm spiritual but not religious. So he started on that kind of tangent, And he said, you get discouraged, especially in the West with Christianity. They're just like the Valentine's Day. I mean, they just knocked off 2 great saints. And he said, my conclusion is, and I'll tell you the essence of all religion, it's very succinct, George Carlin. Now, is that before your time? Remember George Carlin? Does anyone else remember George Carlin? He's a comedian. A comedian, right? He said George Carlin summed up religion perfectly well. Just be nice to people. Now, is that I didn't get into it. Is that the totality of all the wisdom in the world and becoming free from the body? It's just like they have brought it down so low. It's it's like the high jump brought down to like 2 feet, pole vaulting. It's like they brought it down so low that just be nice to people. But even that has a problem, because your idea of being nice to people may be just people who are white, or in a certain economic bracket, or a nationality. I'll be nice to Indians, but I won't be nice to Pakistanis. Or nice could be, let's go to McDonald's, like that. That could be nice. So it's very, very, very fluffy, and there's nothing to it. Be nice. But that's, he said, I was going to say, So your whole understanding of reality is based upon the statement of a comedian. I mean, if you had cancer, would you ask a comedian what you should do? I don't want. We're just going to keep friends because he's got to come back a few more times. So I don't want to get into it with him. But it was a nice conversation. I said a few things. The one thing I said was this. I said the problem in the West is that they don't have a system for realizing spiritual knowledge. And therefore things just fall apart. You know, all these ideas of God and the soul, but they don't have anything really there to help you realize whether it's true or false. I mean, he shook his head. So anyways, well, I may have some more conversations. But I thought it was interesting that he chose as his authority on spiritual life, George Carlin. You know, Hare Krishna. So, I don't. Yeah. So, and then let's finish with the last line here. One must understand how Maya works and how one can be released from the tossing waves of the river of nescience. This is one's first duty. So, the concept of having a duty in the human form of life. Most people in today's is like that. They say you have a duty. They think it must be something to do with the military or something like that. I don't have any duties. I'm free. I can do what I want and not. But actually, no. We have a duty. We have a responsibility in the human form of life. Just like you're given a position. You have a position. What's your position? Yes, you do. You do. You're living in the temples of brahmacharis, right? And you have duties of preaching and puja and cooking, all kinds. You have duties, things you really need to do because of your position. So we all have the position of a human form of life, and our first duty is to understand how Maya works and one can be released from the tossing waves of the river of nescience. So our first duty is to understand these things. And I'll end with this. Prabhupada once, the devotees were quoting that verse, Nadanam najanam nasundarim kavidam va jagadishakame mama janmani janmi ishware bhavatad bhakta hoitaki tvai. And devotees are saying to Prabhupada, so should a devotee, doesn't even care for liberation? Doesn't even care to get out of this material world, just wants to be engaged in the Lord's devotional service. And Prabhupada said that is for very, very advanced devotees. He said, neophyte devotees should be aspiring to get out of the material world. It's more like Ainanda Tunuja Kinkadam verse. Patitam mam vishame babam budao. That I'm stuck, I've fallen into this ocean of material existence. Please help me out. Help me get out. Even if it's just a little particle of dust at your lotus feet. So we're on that platform where being very our impetus is to become free from suffering. It's not the highest level of Krishna consciousness, but our aspiring to be rolling in the ground in ecstasy. It's unrealistic. It's unrealistic at this point, until we become free from the bodily concept of life. So wanting to become liberated from the suffering of this material world, this creation and dissolution, that should be an impetus. It should be a very, very strong one. We don't want to suffer in this material world. We want to end our suffering. And that's our platform we begin on in Krishna consciousness. And then gradually, as one becomes purified, then it doesn't become a problem, because one's beyond the bodily concept of life. One is already liberated. One's already liberated. If you're already liberated, you don't have to think about being liberated. And that's the platform, advanced platform of Krishna consciousness. In fact, liberation stands at your doorstep. Bukanjali, with the folded hands, right? It's already there. It's already there. One surpasses liberation by pure Krishna consciousness. But until that platform comes, yes, it's our first duty to try to understand how is Maya working and how to get out. Like that. They say about prisoners of war, what's their first duty? Well, not that you were ever in prison of war. I didn't insinuate that. I'm sorry.
Surrender.
You look like one.
Surrender.
No, you're already a prisoner. So what's your first duty as a prisoner of war in a prison camp? Escape. Yes, you're actually supposed to be trying to escape. Did you know that? You're supposed to be thinking, how to get out of here. That's your duty now as a prisoner of war. You're supposed to be thinking how to get out. And Janardhan got out. He's here. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I had to say that. Okay. Are there any questions or comments on this verse? Yes, Prabhu. Microphone for microphones?
So this accepting George Carlin as the Acharya, we know that really is sadhu sangha that counts, right? You have to search out the sadhu, and then you can. So comedian is a batu, so you're batu sangha.
Okay.
Madhumangal was a batu.
Yes, that's right.
This is like the.
Okay, commentary from our Sanskrit scholar. Okay, anything else about this verse? Otherwise, we're good. Okay, so we should end here? Good. Okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. And please remember those two saints today. They're very, very, very austere. I was just thinking about when I heard that. I read it again today. I was thinking, would I join the Hare Krishna movement if it was illegal? And I would be under the penalty of death if I was caught. Now, there are devotees in our history, and even today, they're in a situation like that. And they're going on. But would you join the Hare Krishna movement? Yeah, I got you to smile. Okay. Would you join the Hare Krishna movement if it was under the penalty of death that you were found? I mean, that's a question. If we were practicing, we'd probably be really quiet about it. Don't let anyone know, right? But that's what they were doing. Preaching very, very strongly at the risk of being captured. And I guess the Romans liked torturing people before they killed them. I always read about tortured and killed, tortured and killed, tortured and killed. Not just to kill people, you torture them, then kill them. Yeah, that's Saint Valentine. There were two Saint Valentines. They both got it on the same day at different times. February 14th. That's today. So, okay, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu, for a wonderful class.
You're welcome. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.